So, after my Scout vs. Everyone video, inspired by Uncle Dane, took off, I realized a few things. For one, I'm not an expert and did get a few things in my video wrong, such as Demo Man being a counter to Scout. It's actually the other way around. And another thing being, I didn't actually cover the basics of, actually playing Scout. So that's what this video is. Tips on how to actually learn to play Scout effectively and not be that one gibbous Scout running at the enemy team and dying instantly. If you do enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and maybe even subscribe. I'm trying to aim for 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But first, this video is sponsored by Opera GX, the world's first gaming-oriented browser with features specifically made for gamers. Opera GX has some amazing features like Twitch integration, allowing you to see when your favorite streamers are live, Discord integration, which lets you receive Discord notifications straight to your browser, among other services like WhatsApp and Twitter. There's also built-in Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music integration, allowing you to play your favorite music straight from the browser as well. Opera GX also has a tab called GX Control, with features like Hot Tabs Killer, a network bandwidth limiter, as well as RAM and CPU limiters. Gamers will know why this is important after forgetting to close your browser mid-game. Well, not with Opera GX. One of my favorite features is GX Corner, where they show upcoming game releases, general gaming news, and also keep track of game discounts in stores like Steam, so Opera GX indirectly saves you money on your favorite games. The design of the browser has a nice neon gamery aesthetic and is almost entirely customizable up to your needs. There's also a built-in Razer Chroma integration which allows you to sync your peripherals lighting to the colors of the browser. Probably my favorite feature though is a built-in VPN, which allows you to browse more privately and securely and access region-locked content on sites like Netflix very easily. I've personally been using Opera GX for a few months now, and the browser just feels and runs a lot nicer than other browsers I've used. You can download Opera GX for free using the link in the top of the description. If you have any personal feedback or suggestions for the Opera GX team, or you just want to share how many discounts you've found because of GX Corner, you can use the hashtag OperaGX in the comments so they are easier for the Opera GX team to find. But now let's get on with the video. Before we start things off, make sure you're playing on good settings. And by good settings I mean something that allows you to play comfortably but reasonable to an extent. Let me explain. Start by lowering your sensitivity. Most new players, especially players new to shooters in general, have their sensitivity way too high, and as a result can't aim properly and make small adjustments to be able to hit their shots easily. Scout players in general usually have a much lower sensitivity than say a soldier player who doesn't need to make precise adjustments and just needs to move his mouse quickly, or even snipers making large quick flicks. And sensitivity, among other things, mainly consists of two settings: the DPI of your mouse and the in-game sensitivity multiplier. Of course, there's no perfect or right setting for these, as everyone has their preferences, but the most commonly used settings are as follows. The DPI used by most professional players in games is either 400 or 800. The higher the number, the faster your cursor moves. Generally, higher DPI is considered to be better due to less pixel skipping in the game, but it's a very controversial topic and up to your personal preference, and I won't be covering it here. Changing your DPI also depends on your mouse, since you can't easily change your DPI on all mice, and if you can't, I highly recommend investing in a mouse with adjustable DPI, otherwise this will be a massive limitation. The sensitivity setting in game is what you should be changing, rather than your DPI, since changing the DPI also affects your sensitivity in Windows, or Mac or Linux if you're one of those people. Personally, I recommend a lower sensitivity such as anything below 2 because it allows you to make micro adjustments easier. I personally use 800 DPI and 1.2 sensitivity, which gets me approximately 17.1 inches per 360 degrees on a mousepad. Try aiming for below 18 inches per 360 degrees, which you can calculate here on this website linked in the description. Don't really bother with changing the Windows or MYAW values if you haven't changed them yourself, since then they are the default values in both Windows and TF2 respectively. But if you are going to be playing classes that involve a lot of mouse movement as well, such as Soldier or even Engineer, don't limit yourself to a low sensitivity. It's going to be much harder to play. After this is some other important settings that I have to go over. Try to optimize your settings so that your frame rate is as high as possible. Maybe even use a performance config. A higher frame rate generally allows you to aim much more easily. Having bad network settings can also make your game and opponents feel much more choppy. You can do all of this on cfg.tf. I'll also have this linked in the description, along with my personal config that I use on a daily basis. Wait, let me write this down real quick. You can also incorporate useful but optional things such as a custom HUD or a custom hit sound to make it easier and more comfortable to play, but this is, again, up to your personal preference. Now moving on to the actual tips. Although the Scout actually has a pretty versatile set of weapons, there are only a few really viable and great options you should be using. I'm not going to dictate exactly what weapons you should be using in your loadout. I've done this in a video before stating my opinion. This is, albeit arguably, the most accurate tier list I could come up with for all of Scout's weapons, not including reskins. Everything below the B tier is either extremely situational, such as the backscatter, or just straight up useless, like the sun on a stick. The B tier is dedicated to weapons that actually have a good use in a lot of situations. The A tier is weapons I would happily use on my loadouts consistently, and the S tier is just the best items for Scout. For starters, the scattergun is pretty much unbeatable. It is the core component to Scout, and none of the other primary options come even close, although they have their own uses. The critical being an S tier is a little bit controversial, but it's so damn useful. Critical hits on the scattergun are so powerful. I mean, it's been banned in most competitive leagues for a reason. So what I'm trying to say is, don't really use anything below the B tier unless you're just goofing around in casual or something. Of course, this is just my take on it, and I can also make a Scout weapons tier list video of my opinion in the future if that's something you'd be interested in. Having good aim is probably equally as important as your movement while playing Scout. You need to be able to precisely aim at your opponents while moving quickly or even jumping around. There's many aspects of aim to consider. Flicking, tracking, crosshair placement, practicing all of which is extremely valuable in any shooter game, but I won't go over it in specifics here. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see in the future. But for now, here's a fun fact. You can already just practice your aim by simply playing the game as Scout and trying your darndest to hit the enemies consistently. You'd be surprised at how many people spend their time in various practice maps and then fail to hit targets in any real environment. Speaking of practice maps, TR Walkway is a really good place to start. You spawn bots and they run to their death across the walkway. You can also jump around and practice hitting the bots, which will improve your aim in the long run. You can also try specific practice games like Kovac if you're willing to spend the $15 or so, but Aim Labs is a really good free alternative. Practicing your aim for long enough will make you a much better player in a lot more games than just TF2. Hell, it's what allows me to jump into any FPS game and not feel outmatched in every way. I have to put this simply. If you want to be good at playing Scout, your movement must feel fluid to you to the point where you can seamlessly change your direction mid-air or make jumps without thinking about it. This very often gives you a major positional advantage and is basically Scout's main distinction, apart from his speed. Jumping and air strafing is Scout's most important tool. You can practice your movement by just playing Scout on maps and using your movement as much as possible, utilizing various jumps until you can eventually do it seamlessly. However, you can practice the overall movement of the Source engine by simply playing game modes like Surf, KZ, or B-Hop, even in CSGO, because they both share the same movement engine and therefore have very similar movement. At first, I had this divided into two separate categories, positioning and picking your fights, but I decided to put it together into one category because one doesn't really exist without the other. Positioning is an extremely important part of playing Scout. You almost never want to be in the middle of the battle on your own, taking damage from the entire enemy team, because you can't really take much damage. If your team is absent or not helping you in a fight, try to utilize various flank routes on the map to try to attack your enemy when they're off guard or focused on something else. It's also extremely important to prioritize certain targets over others. For example, you should probably focus on the medic healing the entire enemy team over an engineer who is building a nest on last for some unknown reason. Try to engage in situations that will favor you as a player, like when an enemy is distracted by running away. Though this of course doesn't just mean that Scout is purely meant for picking off distracted opponents. Scout is still the most powerful head-to-head combat class in the game, but he can't really take much damage, so just be careful. Last but not least, I did want to mention playing with your team. This really seems obvious, but many Scout players think that they're a one-man army and can take on everybody at once just because the class is technically capable of that, or because they've seen Banny do it or something, and just disregard their entire team. Scout can work very well as a distraction for the rest of the team to make a push, or even a consistent mid-range damage dealer to hold back the enemy team. Scout is by no means just a class you run at the entire enemy team with. So to finish things off, Scout is a very complicated class to get good at. And I've only played about 1,000 hours as Scout myself, so I'm not really an expert. I'm just sharing the knowledge I do possess to try to help anyone I can. Like I've said, if you do want me to make a more detailed video on any of the topics in this video, let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and a sub, perhaps even hit the cool little notification bell. Thanks for watching. Go.
That is so good.